Before I start, let me ask you this. What would you do if your own parents turned your trauma into a business asset? My name is Madison Foster. I'm 32 years old. In last Thanksgiving, my parents disowned me publicly in front of 30 relatives and my sister's extremely wealthy future in-laws. They said I was no longer welcome at family events because I'd gotten pregnant at 19. According to them, I was a liability, a blemish on the spotless image they'd spent decades polishing. What they didn't say, what they never say, is that their business partner assaulted me, that they knew, and that they accepted $200,000 to make sure the truth never surfaced. For 13 years, I carried the shame they assigned me while they quietly spent his money. I vanished from family photos. I was excluded from holidays. I was rewritten as the daughter who chose independence over family values. And when they decided to sacrifice me one last time, this time to secure my sister's engagement into the powerful Harrison family, they had no idea the daughter they discarded had spent more than a decade documenting everything. Before I tell you how their public humiliation became their undoing, take a moment to like and subscribe only if this story resonates with you. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Because sometimes the family scapegoat is the only one holding the truth. We were the Fosters, the family everyone admired at church. My father Robert claimed he built his commercial real estate empire from nothing. My mother Linda sat on 3 charity boards and chaired the annual hospital gala that raised millions. Our Christmas cards featured perfect smiles, coordinated outfits, and our colonial home framed by a flawless lawn. Once, I was the golden child. Straight A's. Violin recitals. Early acceptance to Northwestern. My younger sister Emily was 15, then braces. Braids. Wide. I'd following me around like I could do no wrong. Our dining room was a revolving door of business dinners. My father's partners praised my mother's cooking and toasted their exceptional daughters. Mr. Mitchell, from Mitchell Industries, was there often. He always brought expensive wine. He always sat too close. "Your daughter's becoming quite the young woman," he'd say, his hand resting on my knee beneath the table. I was 18. My father would smile with pride. My mother would suggest I show Mr. Mitchell my acceptance letter, my awards, anything to keep him impressed, invested, and comfortable. Above our fireplace hung a framed family portrait, for people with everything. By the time I turned 19, it became the most expensive lie my parents ever told. They left that portrait up for 13 years, even after removing me from every other photo. I suppose it's easier to pretend someone never existed than to admit why they had to disappear. Looking back, the warning signs were everywhere. The way my father never questioned a grown man's interest in his teenage daughter. The way my mother always seated us together. They were offering me up long before they understood the cost. The pregnancy test showed 2 lines on a rainy Thursday in March. I sat on my dorm bathroom floor holding 3 more tests, Sol positive. My hands shook as I called home. Mom answered cheerfully until she heard me crying. "There's something I need to tell you," I said. "Something happened with Mr. Mitchell." The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then my father took the phone. His voice was calm, clinical, the same tone he used during hostile negotiations. "Come home immediately. Tell no one." The drive took 3 hours. I remember almost none of it. When I walked through the front door, my parents were seated in the living room like they were waiting for a meeting. No hugs, no concern. My father's first question wasn't about me. How much does Mitchell know? The next morning, I was driven to a private clinic 2 states away. My father paid in cash. My mother held my hand, but never once met my eyes. On the drive home, she finally spoke. "This never happened. You were never pregnant. Mitchell was never inappropriate. We're handling this as a family." A week later, $200,000 appeared in an education trust under my name, locked until I turned 30. My father called it a consultation fee from Mitchell Industries. I knew what it really was. The moment I signed those documents, I became the problem. The embarrassment. The daughter who made bad choices and almost ruined everything. They moved me off campus into a small studio apartment and told everyone I needed distance to focus on school. The truth was simpler. They needed me far enough away to keep Mitchell calm, but close enough to keep me quiet. And for 13 years, they believed they had succeeded. I built my life without them, quietly, deliberately, successfully. I graduated summa cum laude while living in a kind of exile, earned my MBA at night while working days at an investment firm. By 25, I was managing portfolios worth millions. Clients trusted me with their futures, even as my own family refused to trust me with their present. Every year, the holiday photos arrived right on schedule. My parents and Emily in matching sweaters, 3 stockings hanging from the mantel, 3 place settings at Thanksgiving. When relatives asked about me, my mother offered her practiced smile. "Madison is so focused on her career," she'd say gently. "You know how ambitious young women are these days." Emily grew up believing I'd chosen money over family. She'd send occasional texts, hesitant, carefully worded. "Mom says you're too busy for family dinners. Dad mentioned you couldn't make it to my graduation." I wanted to tell her the truth so many times. "But how do you explain that your father sold your silence for a business deal? That your mother chose reputation over rape?" Instead, I watched from a distance as Emily became their replacement daughter. Debutante ball at 18. Engagement to James Harrison at 27. Every milestone hit perfectly, preserving the Foster family narrative. She never questioned why her older sister lived 10 miles away, but might as well have been on another planet. Dr. Coleman, my therapist, called it emotional homelessness. For 13 years, we worked through the trauma, the gaslighting, the grief of losing a family that was never truly mine. She kept meticulous records, clinical notes, professional evaluations, documents that would one day matter more than I realized. "Document everything," she always told me. Truth has a way of demanding its moment. The engagement announcement hit the society pages in August. Harrison heir to wed Foster beauty. The photo showed Emily glowing, James's arm protectively around her, my parents smiling proudly behind them. The article praised their close-knit family and spotless reputation, didn't mention their other daughter. The Harrisons were everything my parents aspired to be. Old money stretching back generations, board seats at Fortune 500 companies, the kind of wealth that didn't announce itself because it didn't need to. James's mother, Catherine Harrison, sat on the board of the Met and summered in the Hamptons. His father ran the largest private equity firm in the state. My phone rang the night after the announcement. "Dad, I almost let it go to voicemail, Madison. Not hello, not how are you. The Harrisons are conducting background checks," he said. "Very thorough ones. We need to discuss your situation." By situation, he meant my existence. By discuss, he meant how to erase it. Cooperation, distance, discretion. Each word landed like a weight. The wedding is next spring. Until then and afterward, you need to be invisible. Emily's happiness depends on it. I thought of my sister 28. In love. Building her future on a foundation of lies she didn't even know existed. "And if I don't?" I asked. There was a pause. "Then you're not the smart woman I raised you to be." The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. It still had influence, connections, the ability to make my professional life very uncomfortable. What my father didn't know was that for years I'd been seeing Dr. Coleman twice a week, that I'd kept every record, every receipt, every contemporaneous note, and that I was finally done being invisible. The education trust would be accessible in 3 months. I could wait. After 13 years, patience was something I understood well. The invitation arrived 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. Heavy cardstock. My mother's flawless calligraphy. "Please join us for Thanksgiving dinner. The Harrison family will be attending. Your presence is requested at 4 p.m. sharp. Your presence is requested." Not, "We'd love to see you." Not, "Please come home." Language reserved for meetings and obligations, not daughters. I called Dr. Coleman the moment I read it. "They want something," she said without hesitation. "This isn't reconciliation. Prepare yourself." So I did. For 2 weeks, I gathered documents, medical records from the private clinic, the deposit slip from Mitchell's payoff, and a professional summary of 13 years of therapy notes prepared by Dr. Coleman herself. My attorney, recommended by her, organized everything into a single immaculate folder. "Just in case," he said. Thanksgiving morning, I dressed with intention. Conservative dress, minimal makeup. The pearl necklace my parents had given me for my 18th birthday back when I was still worth presenting in public. I slipped the folder into my purse. Alongside it, a sealed envelope I'd prepared just for that day. The drive to my childhood home felt unreal, like moving through a preserved exhibit of someone else's life. Every familiar street corner carried a memory of the girl I'd been before. That rainy Thursday fractured everything. I parked behind a row of luxury cars, matching Mercedes, Harrisons, clearly. Standing at the front door, I could hear laughter inside at least 30 voices. My mother had spared no effort. I rang the bell. Imagine ringing the doorbell at your own parents' house and waiting. Emily opened the door. Her engagement ring caught the light. Madison, my God, you actually came. Her hug was real, confused but real. Behind her, the dining room buzzed with relatives I hadn't seen in years. At the head of the table sat the Harrison family, effortlessly commanding the room. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped inside. The seating told me everything. One chair sat at the far end of the table, embedded by deliberate empty space. My mother had even adjusted the lighting so it was perfectly illuminated. This wasn't reconciliation, it was staging. Aunt Patricia whispered to Uncle Tom. Cousins avoided my eyes. The Harrisons studied me with polite curiosity, like an unfamiliar artifact. Only Grandma Rose III, and sharp as ever, met my gaze and smiled warmly. Madison, we're so glad you could join us, Mom announced, projecting her voice across the room. Everyone, you remember our eldest daughter? The word eldest landed like a diagnosis. As I took my assigned seat, I heard Mrs. Harrison murmur to her husband, Linda warned me about the situation. How brave of them to attempt inclusion. Attempt inclusion. I was a charity project at my own family's table. Dad stood and tapped his glass. Before we begin, he said, I want to thank everyone for joining us, especially the Harrisons, who will officially become family this spring. His eyes found mine. Family is about choices. It's about choosing who deserves a seat at your table. My phone vibrated softly. Text from Dr. Coleman. You're not that 19-year-old girl anymore. You have power now. She was right. I had power in my purse, in my truth, in the silence I was about to end. I smiled at my father. The same controlled, professional smile I'd watched him use to close deals. He didn't realize he'd just stepped into his own. Mom began passing dishes, playing the gracious hostess. The Harrisons sat close to my parents, placed carefully for maximum importance. And there I was, the family disgrace, exactly where they wanted me. We were halfway through dinner when Mom stood and tapped her glass. The room fell silent instantly. She wore her gala smile, the one that raised millions for causes she never bothered to remember. I want to address something before we continue, she said smoothly. As we celebrate Emily's upcoming marriage into this wonderful family, it's important to be transparent. The word hit like ice water. Our eldest daughter, Madison, has been distant from us for many years, she continued, looking straight at me. Since she became pregnant at 19, forks froze midair. We've carried this shame long enough, Mom said. The Harrisons deserve to know who they're really joining. Madison made choices that nearly destroyed our family's reputation. We protected her for 13 years, but with a wedding approaching, honesty matters. Mrs. Harrison's expression tightened. James shifted in his chair. Emily's face drained of color. Linda, Grandma Rose said quietly, This is not the time. It's exactly the time, Dad said, standing beside my mother. The Harrisons deserve to understand why Madison won't be at the wedding, why she isn't in family photos, why we had to distance ourselves. He turned to me, his expression cold. That was the moment they expected me to break. They had no idea I'd been waiting for this invitation my entire life. Madison is banned from all family events going forward. We cannot allow our mistakes, he paused, savoring the moment to contaminate Emily's fresh start. 30 faces turned toward me. Some wore pity. Others disgust. Most carried that sick, fascinated look people get when they're watching something irreversible unfold. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she stayed silent. James's mother leaned in to whisper to her husband. I set my fork down slowly. The faint clink against the china sounded far louder than it should have. My father wasn't finished. He never was when he sensed blood. To be absolutely clear, he said, his CEO voice filling the room, Madison is no longer welcome at any Foster gathering.
At Christmas.
Not Easter, and certainly not Emily's wedding. He turned to the Harrisons. We apologize for any inconvenience. We should have been more forthcoming about our family challenges. Family challenges. 13 years of trauma reduced to a corporate euphemism. Robert Uncle Tom began. Don't you think I think the Harrisons deserve a family without scandal? My father cut in. Emily deserves a wedding without shadows. Emily finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Dad, please. It's for your own good, sweetheart, my mother said gently. The good parent, shielding the good child from the bad one. Mrs. Harrison cleared her throat. We appreciate your transparency. The Harrison family values honesty above all else. The irony was almost unbearable. Honesty. From the people who buried a crime beneath $200,000 in hush money. I rose from my chair, slow and deliberate, and lifted my purse. Every gaze followed me. I could feel my father's satisfaction radiating across the table. He thought he'd won, thought he'd finally erased me publicly, decisively, in front of witnesses who mattered. Thank you, I said calmly. Thank you for finally being honest about how you see me. My mother smiled, mistaking my composure for surrender. I reached into my purse and found the envelope. 13 years of therapy had led to this moment. 13 years of Dr. Coleman saying, when you're ready, you'll know. I paused, letting the weight of their words settle over the room. My phone buzzed, Dr. Coleman checking in. The vibration steadied me. Before I leave, I said evenly, I want to thank you both for making this so public. It takes courage to announce your character in front of 30 witnesses. My father's jaw tightened. He recognized the tone. I'd learned it from him. The quiet before a deal closes. The calm that precedes a killing stroke. Madison, just go, my mother said, but her voice cracked. Something had shifted. A stillness unsettled them more than tears ever could. I walked around the table, my heels clicking against the hardwood measured, unhurried. I wasn't fleeing. For the first time in 13 years, I was exactly where I needed to be. Emily, I said, stopping beside my sister. I'm sorry you had to learn about our family this way. You deserved better. She looked up at me, confusion and hurt colliding. Maddie, what are you? You'll understand soon. I squeezed her shoulder and continued toward the Harrisons. Mrs. Harrison watched me approach with alert composure, the look of someone who understood power better than my parents assumed. Her husband straightened. James looked like he wished he could vanish. I removed the envelope cream paper, heavy stock, chosen with care. My father inhaled sharply. He recognized it. Mrs. Harrison, I said, extending it to her, since we're sharing family histories tonight. Dada. I thought you deserved the complete record. My father shot to his feet. Madison, that's private. Private. I echoed softly, like my pregnancy announcement just now. Mrs. Harrison accepted the envelope with manicured fingers. Details matter especially when you're about to change everything. This is inappropriate, my mother said sharply, panic creeping into her voice. Catherine, please, you don't need to. Linda. Mrs. Harrison's voice cut cleanly through the room, calm, controlled, deadly. You just announced your daughter's teenage pregnancy in the name of transparency. Surely you won't object to reciprocal honesty. The room went utterly still. My father's hand shook as he reached for his water glass. That tremor, I'd seen it only once before, years ago, when federal investigators had looked into one of his deals. He knew what was coming. Some part of him always had. I returned to my seat, smoothed my napkin, and lifted my wine glass. I'll wait, I said evenly. It's only fair. Everyone waited while my parents told my story. Mrs. Harrison opened the envelope with meticulous care, as though handling an explosive device. Inside were 3 documents. 3 truths my parents had spent 13 years and $200,000 trying to bury. That's private family business, my father shouted, lunging forward. Uncle Tom grabbed his arm, restraining him. I had never seen my father lose control, not the man who ruled boardrooms and negotiated millions with a smile. Robert, my mother said, her voice cracking as her hostess mask finally shattered. What did you give her? Mrs. Harrison was already reading, her eyes scanning the first page with the sharp focus that had built an empire. The room watched her expression change, confusion, recognition, then fury. Medical records, she said quietly. From Stillwater Clinic, my mother went ghost white. That was the place. 2 states away. Cash only. Robert, Mrs. Harrison continued, lifting the second page. Your signature appears on this receipt. $200,000 from Mitchell Industries, dated 1 week after the procedure. You don't understand the context, my father said hoarsely. Robert Forster, the man who never hesitated, never faltered, was stammering. Mitchell was helping us through a difficult time. Mitchell? Mr. Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice sharp and incredulous. Gerald Mitchell has been investigated 3 times for inappropriate conduct with minors. The room exploded, gasps, shouts, chairs scraping. Emily made a broken sound like something inside her had collapsed. The second document, Mrs. Harrison said, cutting through the chaos, is a psychological evaluation by Dr. Sarah Coleman. 13 years of documented treatment for trauma resulting from sexual assault. My father's hand shook violently. My mother sank into her chair, covering her face. There must be a mistake, my mother pleaded. Madison, tell them there's been a mistake. Mrs. Harrison turned the page. This is a notarized statement from the attending nurse, she read aloud. Describing a 19-year-old patient presenting symptoms consistent with acute sexual trauma. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly, each second echoing the night I'd come home terrified, pregnant and alone. Grandma Rose let out a sound like a wounded animal. Oh, Madison, oh, sweetheart. Mrs. Harrison looked up at my parents, and the expression on her face wasn't shock or confusion. It was disgust. You took money, she said to my father. You accepted payment to silence your daughter's rape? The word landed like a blow. Not incident. Not situation. Rape. The truth finally spoken aloud in the same room where lies had been served for decades. It wasn't my father began, but she wasn't finished. The third document, Mrs. Harrison said coldly, is an internal Mitchell Industries report, leaked by a whistleblower. Your daughter's name appears on a list of 4 young women who received similar consultation fees. The youngest was 17. Emily vomited onto the tablecloth my mother's prized heirloom. James rushed to her, but she shoved him away, staring at our parents like strangers. You knew? Emily whispered. You knew what he did to her hand. You made her the villain. Mrs. Harrison stood, the papers clenched in her hand. Mr. Harrison, she said, composed and absolute, we're leaving. Mother, get your coat, Mother. James started. She turned to him, eyes hard. No, and just like that, everything my parents had spent their lives building began to collapse. Her voice brooked no argument. We do not associate with people who sell their children. The room went quiet again. Mrs. Harrison stopped at the head of the table, holding everyone's attention like a conductor. Wait, she said. Everyone here should hear this. You all participated in shaming this young woman for 13 years. She held up the final page. This is a letter from Dr. Coleman, Madison's therapist. May I? I nodded. Let them hear it all. Mrs. Harrison's voice filled the room, clear and unflinching. Madison Foster has shown remarkable resilience in the face of systematic family betrayal. At 19, she was sexually assaulted by Gerald Mitchell, a man her parents welcomed into their home. When she became pregnant, as a result, her parents chose to protect their business relationship over their daughter's well-being. They accepted payment for her silence, forced her to terminate the pregnancy, and then ostracized her to maintain their false narrative. Aunt Patricia began to cry. Uncle Tom's face turned sick. The cousins, who had avoided my eyes all evening, stared at my parents in stunned horror. Furthermore, Mrs. Harrison continued, the psychological damage of being blamed for her own assault, isolated from family support, and branded as the family shame required extensive therapeutic intervention. Despite this, Madison has built a successful career, maintained her dignity, and never once violated the silence her parents purchased until tonight. She placed the papers on the table in front of my father. The fact that you chose tonight to publicly humiliate your daughter one final time, in front of my family, to protect your younger daughter's engagement, reveals exactly who you are. My mother tried to speak. Catherine, please. The wedding, there will be no wedding, Mrs. Harrison said, her voice final. The Harrison family does not join with people who sell their children's safety for profit. But that wasn't even the worst part. There's one more thing, I said, standing again. My voice remained steady. 13 years of therapy had prepared me for this moment. The investigation into Mitchell revealed something else. My father's face went gray. He knew what was coming. I wasn't the first girl. The FBI found a pattern going back 10 years. My father knew. There were complaints before me, settlements before mine. The room erupted. Chairs scraped. Voices rose in shock and anger, but I kept going. When I came home pregnant and terrified, Dad didn't call the police. He called Mitchell.
How?
They negotiated my silence like a business deal, $200,000 for the abortion, therapy, and my signature on an NDA that is now void thanks to the criminal investigation. You're lying, my mother said. But her voice had no conviction. The FBI has the emails. I held up my phone. Mom, Dad. Discussing my situation with Mitchell, negotiating the price of my silence, planning how to spin it as my fault, if anyone asked. I showed them the case number. I've been cooperating with them for 6 months. Emily stood on shaking legs, mascara streaking down her face. You let me think she was? Her voice broke. You let me think she abandoned us for her career. You made me hate my own sister for being a victim. Emily, sweetheart, Mom reached toward her. Don't touch me, Emily snapped. Her voice was raw. Don't you ever touch me again? Grandma Rose stood, using her cane. At 83, she moved with the authority of a matriarch who'd seen too much. She walked to me and cupped my face in her weathered hands. I suspected, she whispered. I'm so sorry I didn't protect you. Mrs. Harrison pulled out her phone. I'm calling our lawyer. Madison, do you have representation? Yes, I said. He's been waiting for my call. The room fractured into chaos. Aunt Patricia confronted my mother, demanding to know how she could do this to her own daughter. Uncle Tom was on the phone, urgent and frantic. The younger cousins huddled together, trying to process the horror of what they'd just learned. Then, a voice from the doorway cut through the noise. I can confirm everything Madison just said. Dr. Sarah Coleman stood there, professional in her blazer, holding a briefcase. I apologize for arriving unannounced, she said. But Madison asked me to be available if needed. This is a violation of privacy, my father began. Actually, Dr. Coleman said. Madison signed a release, allowing me to discuss her treatment in this specific context. Everything I'm about to say is legally protected testimony that I've already provided to the FBI. She walked into the room with the calm confidence of someone who has testified in court before. For 13 years, I've documented Madison's trauma, her PTSD, her struggle with family betrayal, every session, every breakthrough, every setback caused by her parents' continued emotional abuse. We never abused, Mom tried. Gaslighting is abuse, Dr. Coleman said, her voice firm. Isolation is abuse. Blaming a rape victim for her assault is abuse. And in that moment, the truth wasn't just spoken, it was witnessed. Dr. Coleman's voice was clinical, devastating. You didn't just fail to protect your daughter, she said, looking directly at my parents. You actively participated in her continued victimization for over a decade. The Harrisons need to know, she continued, turning her gaze toward James's parents, that Emily shows signs of being groomed for similar exploitation. The family dynamics that allowed Madison's assault are still present. Emily gasped, immediately moved to shield her, but she stepped away, standing alone in the center of the room like a woman finally seeing the truth for the first time. Sometimes the truth takes years to come out. But when it does, everything changes. If this story resonates with you, please consider subscribing for more stories about finding justice and setting boundaries. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their truth matters, and remember you're not alone in your journey. Now, here's what happened after that Thanksgiving. The Fosters went from hosts to pariahs in minutes. Mrs. Harrison was already at the door, her husband's hand on her back. James, we're leaving now. But Emily, James began, torn. She's a victim too, his mother said firmly. But we cannot have our family connected to this. The liability alone. She looked at my parents with undisguised contempt. You're going to be destroyed, criminally, civilly, socially. One by one, the relatives rose to leave. Aunt Patricia hugged me as she passed, whispering apologies. Uncle Tom squeezed my shoulder. Cousins who'd ignored me all evening now looked at me with a mix of respect and horror. Madison's lying, my father cried, desperate. She's bitter about being cut off. Robert. Grandma Rose's voice cut through his protests like a knife. I've watched you lie for 30 years, but not about this. Not anymore. She turned to me. I'm changing my will tomorrow. Everything goes to you and Emily. Your parents are dead to me. My mother collapsed into sobs. This wasn't the controlled crying she'd practiced at charity galas. This was the sound of a woman watching her world collapse. Emily stood in the wreckage of the dining room, staring at the family portrait above the fireplace. Without a word, she walked over and pulled it off the wall. The crash as it hit the floor sounded like finality. 13 years, she said, her voice shaking. 13 years? You let me think my sister was the family failure? 13 years of lies? She turned to me. I'm so sorry, Madison. I'm so sorry. The room emptied until it was just the four of us, what was left of the Foster family. I stood in the ruins of their Thanksgiving. What had been a stage for their perfection was now a wrecked scene of truth. You did this, my father said, his voice hollow. You destroyed everything. No, I replied, lifting my purse. You did this 13 years ago when you chose Mitchell's money over my safety. I just chose to stop keeping your secret. I walked to Emily, who stood trembling among shattered china and torn family history. My door is open when you're ready, I told her. Dr. Coleman has a colleague who specializes in family trauma. I'll send you her information. Emily nodded, unable to speak through her tears. I turned back to my parents one last time. He looked smaller, not diminished. The powerful Robert and Linda Foster reduced to what they'd always been, cowards who sold their daughter for social standing. The trust fund is mine in 2 weeks, I said. My lawyer will be in touch about the rest of the house, the assets you put in my name for tax purposes. I'll be collecting everything. Consider it 13 years of unpaid therapy bills. Madison, please. My mother reached out. But I didn't look back. I walked out of the house for the last time, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was leaving anything behind. I felt like I was finally coming home. Mom, no! I stepped back. You had 13 years. 13 years to apologize, to make it right, to choose me. You chose this instead. I walked to the door, my heels clicking on the hardwood with the same measured pace I'd entered with. At the threshold, I turned back one last time. I recorded everything tonight for the FBI, I said. They're very interested in Dad's connection to Mitchell's other victims. I walked out. With my head high for the first time in 13 years, my lawyer had been waiting for my signal. The call I made from my car set everything in motion. File everything, I told him. The civil suit, the criminal complaint. All of it. By Monday morning, the Foster family empire began its public collapse. The FBI raided Dad's office, seizing computers and files connected to Mitchell Industries. By Tuesday, the local news had picked up the story. Prominent developer, linked to sexual assault cover-up, read the headline under a photo of Dad in handcuffs. The trust fund transferred to my account on schedule, $200,000 plus 13 years of interest. But that was only the beginning. My lawyer discovered 17 properties Dad had placed partially in my name for tax benefits contracts he'd required me to sign, calling them family formalities. Together, they were worth $3 million. Never thought you'd claim them, my lawyer explained. Classic narcissist mistake assuming the victim will stay a victim forever. Mitchell Industries folded within a month. Criminal investigations exposed for more families who'd been paid for silence. Dad's business partners fled like rats from a sinking ship. Credit lines were called in. The house went into foreclosure. Mom's charity boards expelled her within a week. The country club revoked their membership. The church they'd attended for 20 years asked them not to return. In trying to protect their reputation, they'd ensured its complete destruction. Dr. Coleman submitted her 13 years of records to support my civil case of the trauma. The PTSD, the suicide attempts they never knew about, all documented, all admissible. The judge awarded me another $500,000 in damages. But the real justice wasn't monetary. It was the truth finally free-spreading through their carefully curated world like wildfire. Within a month, the Foster name became synonymous with scandal. The story moved through their social circles like a contagion, each retelling adding another layer of horror. The business community blacklisted my father completely. Who would trust a man who sold his daughter's safety for a deal? Mom's book club disbanded rather than have her attend. The hospital gala committee sent a formal letter requesting she'll never contact them again. Every charity she'd worked with publicly distanced themselves. The local paper ran an editorial about wolves in sheep's clothing. It didn't name her directly, but it didn't need to. Their friends, the ones who'd attended their parties, praised their parenting, envied their success, vanished overnight, like the Mitchells, the Carlsons, the Weatherbys. All the families who had formed the foundation of their social world wouldn't return their calls. And in the end, the only thing my parents had left was each other and the truth they had spent a lifetime trying to bury. Mom's sister flew in from Seattle just to tell her she was no longer welcome at family reunions. The house sold at foreclosure for a third of its value. They moved to a rental apartment on the wrong side of town, the kind of place Dad used to buy and flip without ever stepping inside. Mom got a job at a call center. Dad couldn't find work anywhere. His name was poison in the business community. But the cruelest blow came from their own church. Pastor Williams Hood baptized both Emily and me, who'd eaten at their table countless times, delivered a sermon about false prophets and whitewashed supplicants. Everyone knew exactly who he meant. They tried attending service once after that. The congregation's cold silence drove them out before the opening ended. They got what they deserved, Aunt Patricia told me later. But honestly, Madison, it wasn't enough. Not for what they did to you. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Emily called. Her voice was different. Colder, sadder, but somehow stronger. "Can we meet?" she asked. "I need to apologize properly." We met at a coffee shop downtown Neutral Territory. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes, but her posture was straighter than I'd ever seen it. "I broke up with James," she said first. "Not because his family demanded it, but because I realized I don't know who I am. They raised me to be a doll, Madison. Perfect, empty doll." She showed me her phone. "I blocked Mom and Dad," she said. "They keep trying to contact me through other people. Mom sent 17 emails about how you destroyed the family. Dad actually asked if I could lend them money, Emily." "I started therapy," she interrupted. "Dr. Coleman's colleague. She says I show signs of emotional abuse, parentification, and grooming behaviors. I never knew that's what it was. I thought being the good daughter meant something." She pulled out an envelope, hands shaking. "I hired a lawyer. I'm suing them too for emotional abuse, for the trust fund they stole from my college account to pay for their lifestyle. For making me complicit in your abuse without my knowledge." "You don't have to," I said. "Yes, I do." Her voice was firm. "For 13 years, I was their weapon against you. Every family photo without you, every holiday you missed, every time I repeated their lies about your selfishness, I was hurting you. I didn't know, but that doesn't make it okay." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I want my sister back if you'll have me. I know I don't deserve it." "You were a child," I said. "They manipulated you too." Emily finally saw the prison our parents had built for both of us. The family I lost was replaced by the family I found. Grandma Rose became a regular at my apartment, bringing cookies and 13 years of suppressed affection. She'd suspected something all along, but had been threatened into silence. "Your father told me I was having dementia episodes," she admitted. "Said I was imagining things about Mitchell. It made me doubt my own mind. I should have fought harder for you." Aunt Patricia reached out next, then Uncle Tom, then cousins I hadn't spoken to since I was 19. Each carried their own guilt, their own piece of the puzzle they'd been too afraid to examine. We formed a different kind of family, one built on truth instead of image. The most unexpected connection came from other survivors. After the story hit the news, 3 women reached out. All had similar stories about Mitchell. All had been silenced by their families. All had been told to stay quiet, to protect a reputation. We formed a support group, meeting monthly at Dr. Coleman's office. Their strength helped me realize I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was healing. Emily moved in with me while she found her footing. We spent evenings cooking together, watching movies, having the sister conversations we'd been denied for 13 years. She was in intensive therapy, unpacking years of manipulation. "They trained me to be you," she said one night. "The improved version, the one who wouldn't get in trouble. The whole time, they were just teaching me to be a better victim." Even Mrs. Harrison reached out 6 months later, not to reconcile with Emily that bridge was burned, but to apologize and offer a reference for my business. "You showed more courage in one evening than most people manage in a lifetime," her letter said. "The corporate world needs women like you. I found my real family among those who believed me." 6 months after that Thanksgiving, I stood in my new office, CEO of my own investment firm. The lawsuit settlements and recovered assets had given me the capital to break free from working for others. My clients followed me, trusting the woman who'd had the courage to speak truth to power. Emily was back in school, studying psychology with a focus on family trauma. She'd moved into her own apartment, but we had dinner every Sunday. She was dating someone new, a social worker, who understood trauma and treated her with the respect she was still learning she deserved. Our parents disappeared into obscurity. Last I heard, they'd moved to a different state, living under Mom's maiden name. Dad was working construction. Mom was stocking shelves at a grocery store. They sent one letter through their lawyer, asking for forgiveness and financial help. My lawyer's response was 2 words: no contact. Dr. Coleman and I reduced our sessions to once a month. Maintenance, she called it, though we both knew it was more like victory laps. 13 years of intensive therapy had led to this. Not just survival, but triumph. The Mitchell investigation expanded to 3 states. 17 families came forward. Dad was facing federal charges for money laundering and conspiracy. The FBI agent handling my case told me my testimony had been crucial. "You broke the dam," she said. "Your courage gave others permission to speak." I started speaking at survivor conferences, sharing my story with rooms full of people who understood. The girl who'd been silenced at 19 found her voice at 32. And it turned out that voice could help others find theirs too. I chose peace over family, and I've never been happier. Your truth matters, even if your family denies it. For 13 years, I believed their version of my story. The shameful daughter who got herself in trouble. The selfish sister who chose career over family. The stain on their perfect reputation. But truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deep you try to bury it. Setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary. It's going no contact with your parents doesn't make you a bad daughter. Refusing to keep family secrets doesn't make you disloyal. Choosing your mental health over family harmony makes you brave, not selfish. Some people will say you should forgive them. Family is everything. Holding on to anger only hurts you. But here's what I learned. Forgiveness isn't required for healing. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to walk away and stay away. My parents lost everything because they valued their reputation over their daughter's safety. They spent 13 years building a house of cards, and I didn't knock it down, just stopped protecting it from the wind. If you're sitting at someone's table right now, feeling like the family shame, wondering if your truth matters, it does. If you're keeping a secret that's eating you alive to protect people who wouldn't protect you, you don't have to. If you're being blamed for something that wasn't your fault, that shame isn't yours to carry. Your story matters. Your pain is valid. Your truth deserves to be heard. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's refusing to be silenced anymore. It's choosing yourself even, if that means standing alone at first. Because eventually, you'll find your real family. The people who believe you, support you, and love you without conditions. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've survived family trauma or had to set difficult boundaries, you're not alone. Please like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Share your own boundary-setting victories in the comments. Your story might help someone else find their courage. Remember, choosing yourself isn't selfish.